Mike Owens here. Today I'm joined by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Stephen, always a pleasure to sit down and chat. How are things with you today?
Man, everything's great, man. Pleasure's all mine. I love being on chatting with my man Michael. I love hanging out with you, brother.
I love it. We obviously scheduled this catch up prior to UFC 300, and then Max Holloway becomes the BMF champion and one of the greatest knockouts in history. I need to get your reaction first and foremost, and for that knockout from Max Holloway.
First off, if you want to see it live, like go to my Instagram and you can see it live. We posted it up not too long ago, me and Sweet Tea, and our reactions of it. But it was the same as everybody else's. Like, I've always been a big fan of Holloway. He's another NMF, some guy who just won the BMF, which is pretty crazy. Going up a weight class, and we've seen in the past when he would go up the weight class to fight Dustin Poirier, and we kind of saw what happened there. I wanted my man Max to win. But I didn't expect it for him to win it like that. Leading up in the first round, it was kind of back and forth. I think Max Holloway was winning a lot of the exchanges up until he broke his nose. He hit him with that perfectly timed spin back kick to the dome, and Dustin was after that fight. Justin wasn't the same. Justin was not the same. He wasn't pressuring forward. He kept messing with it, kept going back to his nose. I think it was a big problem for him as the round went on, not be able to breathe, not wanting to get hit there again. And Max was just Max, man. At the end of the fights, or if nobody's been put away yet, he says, meet me in the middle. And I did not expect it to go like that because we know how durable Justin Gaethje is, right? But to put him to sleep like that was just epic, man. It was perfect.
There's been a lot of debate since about where this ranks in terms of the greatest KOs in history. I'm wondering where you would put it and what are your other notable historical KOs?
Man, obviously it's up there with, I think my top recent was the Leon Edwards and Usman fight. That knockout was epic. The flying knee to me is always number one. When George Masvidal knocked out Ben Askren, but it's got to be up there in the top 5. But those two are kind of like the ones I really look back to and just remembered it being one of the all-time greatest knockouts. It's up there with when Michael Bisping knocked out who was it? Who did he knock out?
Luke Rockhold?
Yeah, it was Rockhold. It was Rockhold. And when he also knocked out from your neck of the woods.
Are you talking about Dan Henderson knocking out
Dan
Michael
Henderson?
Bisping?
Yeah, I'm thinking of Dan Henderson.
Yeah.
When he knocked out Bisping. So those are some of the top of my favorite knockouts for sure. But that's got to be up there top 5.
You mentioned NMF then, the nicest motherfucker. Do you think this is a realistic possibility? Because I've heard you talk about it probably since the original BMF at 244. Do you think it's a chance this could happen? And if so, who would your ideal opponents be from, say, lightweight, welterweight, and middleweight league? What would be the realistic fight if it was to happen?
To fight for the NMF?
For the NMF, yeah.
Oh man, there's a bunch of new nice guys out there, man. Top of the list. Because it was between me and Vicente Luque at first, and whoever won that fight, I think, ended up getting the NMF belt from Ariel Helwani. So I ended up winning, obviously, but he was definitely a really nice guy. I think he deserves it. Let me see. Oh, man. Robert Whitaker for sure. Robert Whitaker at 185, definitely an NMF. Heavyweight, who are we looking for? Let's see. Aspinall's a nice guy, I believe.
Yeah, he is.
I think he deserves an NMF belt as well. Let's go down to the 155. Definitely. Right now it's I'm thinking obviously Max Holloway at this point. He's moved up.
Yeah.
He's moved up. Dustin Poirier for sure. Man, I can go on and on. There's a lot of top-notch gentlemen in the UFC at every weight class.
100%. Turning the conversation back to you and your career. Obviously, you're coming off that last fight in December. Where are you at in terms of getting another fight booked? Have you got an ideal card or a date or a location that you would like to fight on next, or are you just waiting on the call?
I'm just waiting at this point. I would love to get a fight in either July, August, somewhere around there. After my last fight, got some things I got to work on, especially when it comes to my ground game, my wrestling, and even my striking, man. Just all around, just wanted to kind of slow things down, kind of work on some things technically, and get back out there and be a different fighter, a better fighter. So take some time off and get back in there in at least July or August is my kind of my plan.
How do you reflect on the Shavkat fight? Is there areas that you look at and go, they were positive, or where do you look at it? I'll be the areas for you to improve?
Always, always there's some positives and some negatives. I mean, the positives is what I look at, but everything that we worked on leading up to the fight was working. We knew he
Mm,
was going to give me the fence. We knew who his coaches were, and everybody that comes from that gym wants to do the same thing. Gilbert Burns wanted to shoot in, take me
mm,
down. Bilal Muhammad, same thing. We knew that Shavkat. Oh, well, actually, leading up to the fight, I figured Shavkat would want to stand and strike because that's all
mm,
he talked about was striking with me.
mm.
I didn't expect him. I kind of knew in the back of my head that he was going to try to hit me up, try to get me to the floor at the ground at some point, and everything that we worked on was working perfectly. But the thing is, at that level, you make one little mistake, your opponent going to take advantage of it, and he did exactly that. I mean, he's really good at seeing those little things, the little mistakes, and took advantage of it. Ended up getting me down, and from there it was over. He ended up getting my hand caught behind my back, wasn't able to get it out, and it was just downhill from there.
Look,
But
you
all in
obviously,
all, man, that's what I look at. I look at all the positives.
yeah. Look, you've fought a murderer's row of, the top contenders at 170, so I imagine you have a good gauge for this question, but there's a lot made of the hype of Shavkat, specifically the undefeated record and the 100% finish rate. Having spent time with him in the cage and given all the other people that you faced, do you feel like the hype around Shavkat is real? Is it warranted in the way that people talk about him?
Yeah, man, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you don't really know until you step out there with a guy, right?
Mm,
Number one, his whole demeanor and out there was 100% in the game, and the guy is good everywhere. He's got great striking, good boxing. He's been and outstruck some of the best strikers in the division in Jeff Neal. He's got great grappling skills, submitted some of the top guys as well.
mm,
Um, he's definitely could be possibly be a title, title holder here in the near future. Would I love to get another fight with him? Of course. I mean, with all these guys,
mm.
and especially with him because he's so good. I would love to be able to go out there and go 5 rounds with him. Just to be able to spend more time with him in the octagon and kind of feel him out and see what's what. Um, would be amazing. But obviously, I lost to him, and I should have taken advantage of that. Should have done better. But I'm going to keep moving forward and hopefully get another shot as I work my way back up.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago about how everybody that you fight tries to get you to the fence and take you down. I'm wondering at this stage of your career, are you more interested in the striking matchups, the guys who, in theory, likes of a Kevin Holland, who in theory, based upon their skill set or based upon their mentality, would want to stand and trade with you?
I mean, that's always like a positive. That always puts a smile on my
Mm,
face,
mm,
when people bring that up. But at the same time, like I want to be known as a good MMA fighter, not just as a good striker. So at this point, I want to keep testing my wrestling. I want to keep going out there with these grapplers and make those improvements that I didn't make to be at the top. So yes, the going out there and just having strikers puts a smile on my face, but I want to be known as not just a great striker, but a good all around MMA fighter. So give me the wrestlers, man.
mm. It feels like the fight that has been wanted by fans for so long is so possible with Michael Page coming over to the UFC and obviously having that fantastic debut against Kevin Holland at 299. What did you make of MVP's debut? Because as I mentioned, it's been one that MMA fans have wanted for quite a while.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, even when he was in Bellator, everybody was like, "Man, MVP versus Wonderboy." Great performance. They did a really good job out there. Distance management, covering the gap, being tricky, especially with somebody like Kevin Holland. But everybody asked that, and I think actually Michael Venom Page said it very well. It could, a positive and a positive doesn't always make a positive.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and we have such similar styles. It could possibly be a very boring fight for everybody. We're both counter strikers, very similar styles. So it could possibly be me and him bouncing out there in the middle, just waiting on somebody to do something.
Mm.
And even though we have similar styles, that doesn't always make it an exciting fight. So, you know, he's a good friend of mine, good martial artist, karate guy. at this point, I don't think it's necessary. But you know, he's going to keep working his way up, and he might even jump past me to fight some of these guys because he's touched on a hype train right now. And he's been at the top of Bellator for such a long time. I can see him working his way up. But at this point, no, man, I want to keep fighting the wrestlers and trying to improve that, try to get my wrestling better as well. And I thought it was a great performance for sure.
It's interesting that you bring up that quote because I actually made a note of that myself, and I noticed that quote and I wanted to ask you about it. And it's interesting that both you and Michael agree with that sentiment that it could be I mean, boring's maybe a tough harsh, but maybe a hardcore fan's delight, and maybe not some of the casual fans would like, given some of the booze that we heard on 300. But is that correct that you feel like it maybe mightn't catch fire in the way that maybe some fans are expecting?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, man. You know, it gets so much hype around it, and when it's not exactly what everybody expects, it's known as one of the first fights out there. And I'm in the entertainment industry, and I want to be in it. I want my fights to be entertaining. I want the fans to go, "That was epic," kind of like the Kevin Holland fight that I had,
Mm.
because he was game. This was the guy that completely different fighting style as Michael Venom Page. He comes forward. He likes to duke it out. He's got charisma. He likes to chat out there, things like that, you know. Ian Gary would be another possible one that I would love to step out there in the cage with as well, and to test myself out. Not completely different styles of striking, you know.
Mm.
So, but when it comes to me and Michael Venom Page, you know, it's one of those like, you know, everybody wants to see it, but if it actually happened, I think more people would be disappointed in it than anything else.
Mm.
So.
At this stage of your career, and for some reason, there seems to be a lot made of your age at 41 than other fighters. It seems to be like people almost view you as being 60 or 70 years of age rather than just past that
I
40-year-old mark.
know.
But have the goals changed at this stage of your career, or is it still that 170-pound strap that you're gunning
Still
for?
170, man. I'm in a weird weight. You know, I'm kind of caught in between the 155 and the 185 division. You know, I don't have a big frame. You know, like Robert Whitaker, he's big bone, big barrel chest. Always struggled to get down to 170, like almost killed himself. So for him to go up, it just made sense. He still had the power. He was able to put muscle on because he had the frame for it. Somebody like me who's kind of caught in the middle, I don't have a big frame like Robert Whitaker does, I'm too big for 155. You know,
Mm.
if they had like you know, I don't know, man. For it would be cool if they had like a 175 division,
Mm.
170, because you
Yeah.
have some guys that are, you know, that struggle down to get to 170, and you know, they are fairly big. They are got, you know, fairly big framed. So to make it a little bit easier for them, have another weight class. But I'm kind of stuck in the middle. It's like I don't struggle hard to get to 170, but I struggle. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like most of these guys do. So 170 is just where it's at for me.
Have you ever considered the move to 185? I mean, there is some obviously that maybe strength difference might be an issue, but have you ever considered the move up to middleweight? Because the likes of a Wonderboy versus Adesanya fight is just music to my ears if that could ever be made.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that from everybody. But if you actually were in the same room with me and him, and you'll see how big
Mm.
these guys are.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. You know, these guys are cutting from 125, 130 is with their natural walk around weight. I don't think he gets that big, but I do know some 185ers that walk around heavy. And they're towering 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", most of these guys. And that's very rare in the welterweight division. I mean, Kevin Holland's kind of like the only guy that's like 6'4", you know, in
Mm.
this division. Um, so yeah, man, you got a lot of guys who want to see that fight happen, but the dude's huge.
Yeah.
Like you see us in the same room. It's like, okay, it makes sense. Like, no
Yeah.
wonder you don't move up. I'm like looking up at these guys. Even
Mm.
Chris Weidman, I look up at him. He and our frames are my frame is so much smaller than these guys. It's
Mm.
like if it was just striking, 100%. Like I would
Yeah.
love to go out there if it was just a boxing fight, but it's MMA. You know, if I get the best of them there, they can always switch back to something else, to wrestling. They shoot for a takedown or just hem me up against the cage. But yeah, 170 is my home for sure.
So if we look at the 170 division, there's been a lot of movement in that top 10, top 15 range since your last fight. I mean, Jack Della Maddalena's moved into the top five. We have obviously Ian with that big win over Jeff Neal. Joaquin Buckley, obviously MVP, have moved into the top 15 as well. So who has impressed you most in the rest of this top 15 division?
Man, JDM has been crushing it, man. Just stone cold, going out there, not just boxing, but putting in everything together. He's an all-around MMA fighter. So I think he's impressed me a lot as well. Man, there's a lot of guys in this division that are just very good MMA fighters. And there's some guys that deserve the title shot, but maybe just they don't have that exciting factor in Bilal Muhammad, right? He's on a crazy win streak, should be fighting for the title, but it's just like UFC's like, nah, it's not happening. And I don't know if it's because he's not a very exciting fighter. He doesn't talk trash. He doesn't have that entertainment, factor about him like some of these other guys.
Yeah.
So, but I think at the top of the list, it's got to be JDM for sure. I think he's done some really hard, good work in this division, and could possibly be fighting for the title next.
It's interesting you bring up Bilal because I did want to mention him. I spoke to him on Thursday when I was in Las Vegas, and he was adamant that he's getting the title shot next. But there is a question, if it hasn't been made yet, then is he going to get that shot? And it's interesting that you bring it up about him maybe not being the biggest talker, because you've always been that guy who doesn't want to trash talk, who wants to keep things respectful. Do you feel like the sport is going in a bad position if the guy who should be next, based upon their resume, but maybe doesn't get the shot because of they're not talking or they don't have the star power? Do you think that could be an issue?
When you're just looking at the sport, then yes. I mean, there was a time when the Fertitta brothers were, kind of over it. They followed it. You didn't have to be the biggest talker to get the next shot. If you earned it and you worked your way up, you got it. Now that it's kind of managed by that, entertainment industry, people are just wanting the bigger, most exciting fights. If it's making noise on Twitter or Instagram on social media, they'll make the fight happen. So entertainment wise, no, I think it's great. It's made the sport what it is today. With Conor McGregor and the Chael Sonnens of the division or the UFC. But when it comes to the sport, yeah, because then it gets held up. I feel like, it kind of backs up and gets held up. So I can understand it in just a sport, but then and I can also see the entertainment side of it. So it kind of goes back and forth, kind of goes both ways. Got to look at it both ways.
Yeah, 100%. A couple more from me. And again, thank you for your time. It's quite a nice segue. You're talking about social media followers because I saw you hit 1 million on Instagram last week.
Yeah,
just
man.
wanted to give you the opportunity to say what you would like about that, because it is a nice accomplishment and obviously a big show of the support for Wonderboy.
Well, man, like I said, in my one of my last Instagram posts, I'm just blessed to have these guys and honored that they find entertainment in what I do and in my journey through life and the fight game, that they would want to follow me. So, I just want to thank all of my followers out there for their support and being along with me for this journey, this epic journey of life that I have. So I think it's awesome.
I love it.
Thank you.
Last one from me. We're obviously in April 2024 now. I'd like to know, what are your goals for the next 12-month period? In an ideal world, where is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson come the 1st of April 2025?
Well, at this point, it's, I've kind of looked back, I kind of stepped back a little bit and kind of gotten back to the basics. Next time I step out in that octagon, I want to be a better MMA fighter, not just a better striker, but to be a better MMA fighter. And for me at this time in my life, that if I want to work my way back up to being the champ, or even working in the top 5, top 3 of the division, I got to be a better MMA fighter. There was a time where I just focused on the striking, because I had somebody in the UFC look at me. I think it was after my second fight or third fight in the UFC. I out wrestled my opponent. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but I ended up winning. And they said, remember, it wasn't your wrestling that got you in the UFC. So I was kind of picking up what they were putting down and just focused on my striking. But at this point, I cannot hang with the guys that are in the division at this point, because the game has changed. people are becoming better and more all-around MMA fighters when it comes to striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and I've got to evolve as well. So I kind of step back, going back to the basics and really working hard on my jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So next time I step out there, I'm a better MMA fighter. I'll get that W. So that's kind of like my goal at this point, is to really focus hard and get back to the basics.
I love it. Stephen, it's always a pleasure to catch up. It really is. Thank you for the time today, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Pleasure's all mine, my friend. I appreciate you, brother. Tell everybody I said what's up, and hopefully we can do this again soon.